Okay, so this video is about how I figured out how to put a runner on the winder part of my steps. I'm not a professional, so this is just something that I've figured out as I've gone along. So I'm not saying it's the right method, but it's what I'm choosing to use, and it seems to be working for me. Let me put the light on. I'm not, as I say, I've never really made a video before, so you'll have to bear with me if I'm a little bit long-winded in places. I'm on about probably take 25 now, I don't even know. Right, so first things first, I looked online to try to get advice how to fit the carpet, how to fit a runner on winder steps, and I found some information that was helpful, but most of it was a little bit long-winded and a bit complicated for my brain at that time anyway. So this is what I have done. So the first piece of advice that I did get online, I'll try to find the link and put it into the links in the video if I can figure out how to do that. Fit the straight part first. So that is what I've gone ahead and done, and you do have to do that, and I'll tell you for why when we get down to the bottom. So as you can see, I've done the straight part first. I've bound it as well, so I'll probably do a little bit on that at the end of the video. So my stairs, as you can see, are straight up to a point, and then you get to the part where there's the angle, which we know those are the winders. So not everybody's house is going to wind or curve in the same way that mine does. I can only go by what I've got. When you get down to this part, so do the straight part first. When you get down to the bottom of the straight part, you do have to cut it, because if you don't and you start trying to turn it and twist it and whatever, you're going to get all of this waste on the carpet. I couldn't really afford to do that, because this, believe it or not, is not actually a carpet, it was actually a rug before. So I decided to use it as a runner, and I'll tell you why. So I fitted this carpet in my room. So this carpet, this runner, they're actually different. They're not the same carpet. This one I had fitted and I had a bit left over. This rug was, fortunately, an absolutely identical colour. It's very similar material, if you like. It's not quite the same, but it's quite similar, and I thought, oh, okay, I know what I'm going to do. I've got leftover carpet, I'm going to try and make that into a runner. I'm one of these people that will give anything a go, try anything. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So this is the straight part, which I think I've done a pretty good job on. I'm quite proud of it. This rug, though, to be honest with you, was not really the best thing to use for stairs, I don't think, but it looks so lovely, I actually don't mind. So cut off at the straight bit at the bottom. Okay, now when you get down, so this is the first thing that I was trying to figure out. When you get down to the part of the stairs where it starts to angle, I was trying to figure out, well, should that bit be straight or does it need to curve? So what I did is I looked online, I looked at pictures of runners that had been fitted before, and where you can really see a good illustration of it is if you look at the ones that are striped. And what I could see is where the professionals have done it, they do start to curve from the step where it starts to angle. And actually when I started to fit, I realised, well, actually you have to do that, you've got no choice. Now, if I'd have done it straight from this step, what would have happened is, yeah, it would be straight here, but then when we get down to the bit, this is called, professional term, waterfall style. When it falls down on what's called the waterfall, I picked that up from the internet. This part would be crooked. You'd have a carpet that was sort of leaning in that direction or the other direction, depending on which way you're bending, which of course would look crap, so that's not really what we want. So for days and days and days I was trying to figure out, right, how do I do this without wasting this rug, because I don't have that much carpet to work with. So after days and days of looking for information, I thought, right, okay, logically what you want is the runner to be coming down the centre of each step. So first thing that I did was, okay, so I'm going to mark out what the centre of the runner is. So that is what I've done here. If you don't want ink on the back of the carpet, I'll see if I can find it in a minute. There is a pen that you can get from a haberdashery shop. Let me see if I can find it. I had it, I'll find it in a minute. But there is a pen that you can get that the ink will disappear after a couple of hours. It's called an air erasable pen. You can usually pick them up from a haberdashery shop. If I can find mine, I'll show you at the end of this video. You can use that, and actually if you mark anywhere, then the ink's going to disappear. You're not going to see it afterwards. For me, I wasn't really that bothered, because I think, okay, I'm not going to see the bottom of the stairs. And I did use the air erasable pen, but then the ink disappeared before I was ready to fit the carpet, so that was no good. All right, so we've marked out the center, so that's the first thing that I've shown you. That's what I've done. Okay, I didn't really need to mark out the center on the step itself for this step in particular, because where you want to line it up to for this step is the back bit here. So you want to make sure that this edge matches and this edge matches. When I've gone to cut it, and it's really kind of unavoidable, and I looked on professional sites as well, and from the advice they say, well, you're going to get a little bit of overhang. You get a very, very tiny, I don't know if you can see it, but you get a tiny bit of overhang. But because I've bound it, I mean, if you're doing this with regular carpet, you'd probably just cut that little bit off, really, to be honest with you. But I think personally, because I've bound it, when I pull it in, once it's all in properly, you can't really see that. Doesn't really show. So if I was standing up, you can't really see that it's got a little bit of overhang there, so I'm not really too bothered by that. And as you can see, if I can pull the bind in here, it matches up. So once I fix all of that bit, it's going to look all right. So I'm not too worried about that. So that's that step anyway. So for this step, all you need to do is make sure that you've got the center marked out on the back of the runner. This piece here is one piece. This piece here, I had to cut it from that edge there and then realign it and cut it and trim it. So that's the first thing. Now, where you do want to mark, so this part you don't necessarily need to mark for this step, but when you get down to the bottom of the step, because you want it central, you're going to have to mark the center of the step. So I've done that there. And how I've done that, let's see if I can find my tape measure. Oh, I can never find anything when I bloody want it. Okay, so tape measure. This is just rough. I'm not going to do it exact, but I'm just going to show you generally what you do. So you're going to measure. So I measured from this corner here. So you measure the back of the step, so the bottom of the step where your carpet's going to fall. So essentially, I'm going to measure here, and I'll show you the point that I measured up to. So most steps, when they've got a curve, they've got this little bit of overhang here. And where I want it to sit central is on the bevel. So from this point here, because to me that's the face of the step logically. That's how I see where the center of the step would be. So I've measured from this corner here, right in the back of the corner there, to that point there, and marked it halfway. Made a straight line going up. Now ideally what happens when you do that, this will be central anyway, because it's like, as long as you've got this bit centered, then this, wherever that lines up, it's going to be centered from the top, so I haven't needed to mark there. When I drop the carpet now, technical term, probably not. When I drop the carpet now, if you see the central line, you can sort of see it from this distance. It's better if you're close up. It's going to fall, it should fall on that line there, and that's where you line it up. And that makes sure that the carpet is central. I don't know how the edges line up, but they just seem to do that themselves, so it's like magic. So you can see it's lined up centrally now. So I haven't done, I've cut, well, I haven't cut all of the 3 steps, but I've got to do the other 3 steps. So the next step along is going to be slightly different. So this is where you've got the widest part of the step. So I'm going to show you something that happens here. First of all, I'm going to show you how I lined it up, and then I'm going to show you something else. So to line this one up, I've marked the center of the step there. This one you probably should mark a center line, because you've got to make sure that the carpet lines up when it's curving. I don't really know how to explain that, but I think logically you'll probably get what I'm talking about. So I've marked it actually on the step here, and then down to the bottom of the step, so I can see where the center is there. So then I'm going to align the center here. Now what I found when I did this part, and I've done it, it's probably because of that wide part. I don't know why it works logically, but I'm not a physicist or anything, so don't ask me. Anyway, the actual centre of this step, if I followed the central line of this step, that would have been the line where that green line was. But then when you turn it and you want to get down to the bottom, can you see how it's really skew with when you go down to the bottom? So on this step, probably because and I think it's because it's the wider step, because it doesn't seem to happen on the other steps. But on this step, what's going to happen is that I'm going to have it's going to be a bit longer on this edge than it is on this edge. Now, if you want, you could line it up perfectly, and professionals probably do. But I'll show you what happens if you try to put it perfectly on that line. I don't know, it's perpendicular, something like that, I don't know. Anyway, right, so I'm going to show you what happens if I follow that green line. So you can see I'm lining it up. So the centre's there, that's the green line. If you saw at the back of there, the red line is there, and that's where the line falls in the centre. So I'm lining it up to the green line now. And when if you just let it fall naturally, the carpet, it's not going to fall on that line. It's going to end up somewhere like there. And you can twist and turn it and you can line it up naturally, but what happens if you do that is that, I'm not going to show you, if you do it yourself you'll see what I'm talking about, but if I lined it up there, what would happen is I'm going to have an excess bit here. So I think what some professionals probably do is probably cut that in the middle and join it like a seam. I don't really want to do that because this rug is really not the greatest thing for stairs anyway, and it will probably end up fraying. And it's just going to be difficult. It'll look awkward. It will look really crap. So I've decided, okay, for this stair, I can cope with that bit being a bit longer. And actually, it looks all right when it's down. So I'll show you if I line it up onto the line. So that line there, the red line, is where it naturally falls if I just leave it to fall. And I line it up at the bottom. So I'm going to line it up here. So this is just for demonstration. So I'm going to line it up in that corner there and make sure. And then I'm going to line it up in this corner here so that it's meeting the edges of the step above. So logically that seems correct to me. And then what happens is that it will fall on a natural line. This step here, I've done the same thing where I've measured and I've marked where the centre of this step is. So that's the central line. So although it won't go straight along that green line, it will fall straight into the centre there. So it will be central on the next step down. So if I drop it, you'll see, I've not quite lined it up, but if I drop it, you'll see it's going to fall down that line. When I get down to the bottom of this step, I'm going to trim it. And then do the same again for the next step. So the next step now, if I had the next step, I'm going to mark it. I'm going to line it up to that carpet in the centre. It's going to have a natural fall, and then I'm going to line it up to the centre mark that I've got at the bottom there. And that's going to give me my curve on the stairs. I'll try and show you what it looks like from the top, what it's going to look like when it's done. And if I can, I'll try and post a photo of when it's all finished. Yep, and then I'm gonna, obviously that bit's gonna be cut and it's gonna turn. Go back, it will turn. You'll get a rough idea of what it looks like when you see all three curves. So can you see how it curves? And then when I get down to the bottom, as long as it's lined up, it should follow a really nice natural line. As I say, this is demonstration. When I've done it, then I'll take a photo and I will post it up. I'll show you some of the mistakes I made as well, just to give you some tips. So as I said, this isn't really the best carpet for stairs. It was a rug. So what I'm going to have to do, the rest of the steps it seems to be okay on. So I've done silicone on this step. So I'll show you on this step. I've siliconed it so that it doesn't come apart, but I think it's still not really going to be sturdy enough. So what I will probably do is run some stitches along to hold it in several places so that it's got less chance of fraying, and then I'm probably going to put some duct tape along there. But what I did when I cut it, and actually all the way along the edges as well, the edges are kind of all right because you don't necessarily stand on those. I put silicone, so I'll show you the one that I used. That's what I used. Okay, it's a good advert for Unibond. But it probably wasn't, I'll show you again, but this probably wasn't really the best silicone to use because it's water soluble. So it's not rubbery, so it's probably not as sturdy and not quite as stretchy, so it's probably going to break a little bit easier, I think. So I wouldn't necessarily use that. If you can get one that's, I don't know whether the bathroom kitchen one might hold it a little bit better, but I think you need one that's a bit more rubbery. I don't know if they're all water soluble. Maybe if you get one that's not water soluble, it might be a little bit better. But that stops the carpet from fraying essentially. I think if you can run stitches along, so if you've got the patience and you can run some stitches along as well, it's probably a good thing. But of course it's going to depend on the backing of your carpet. If the carpet's got a really tough backing, like the one that I've got at the top of the stairs, which is actually carpet rather than a rug, then it will probably hold together better anyway. But I'd still put maybe some silicone on it or seal it with a glue gun or something along those lines. It's just going to be, it's going to last probably a little bit longer if you can do that. So the other one you can see wasn't quite so bad, but this one, because I've been pulling it around, that's what's going to happen if you start pulling it around, and when people step on the steps, that's what's going to happen. So I'm going to have to do a little fix up on that. All right, so I'll show you some of the other things that I picked up along the way. So you can see I've bound it on the edge. So I'm either going to glue this into place, or I'm going to staple it. I don't know, something like that. Anyways, so I'll try anything. So I'll think of something, I'm sure. Right, one of the things that I wanted to say as well, when I used a glue gun to bind this, what I didn't realise, I'd never used a glue gun before. Oh my God, they're like magic. They're so much fun to use, but really dangerous because the glue drips and it's really hot. If you get that on your fingers, you'll know about it. So make sure that you've got your hands covered with gloves or something like that. I tend to be a little bit have a go, so tend to do things without doing them properly sometimes. It's just how I am. But what I figured out along the way is, because it drips, put it on a plate or put it in a box or something along those lines. Don't worry about all of this glue on there. Actually, that melts off when it gets hot. But what happened was that I was resting it on the stairs, and where the glue's gone onto the stairs and I've pulled off the glue, it's pulled off the paint. So that's one of the things that I did that was a little bit silly. The other thing that I figured out, because although I said this is in one part, it's actually two parts, but you can't really tell, but essentially it could be one part. So what I did with the second part is, rather than try to glue the binding whilst it was on the stairs, I did it flat on the kitchen floor and did the binding there. That was a little bit easier. It hasn't made a huge difference, but it was a little bit easier, and I found that the bit I did have to repair, like some of the bits where you've glued it are going to come away a little bit once you lay it, because you're twisting it and you're turning it. I found they didn't come off quite so easily where I've done it where it was flat. But the only thing is, what I found is where I done it when it was on the stairs, is that you get the right tension because it's already folded, whereas if it's flat you might not. So it might not, I don't know how to explain it, but it might not stretch quite the same way. So it's depends on which way you prefer to do it. But as I say, I've done both ways. So this step was up to here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So up to this part was where I'd done it on the stairs. And then from this part was where I'd done it on a flat surface. And you can see it's not really much different, but I've got, you've got some dents in here that I'm going to have to fix up a little bit. So that's one of the things that I've done wrong. So I've shown you where it's fraying. So what I'll do on this bit is I'll trim it. Again, I'll take all that bit where it's coming apart, because I've got a long piece of carpet there. Trim it, and I'll probably put a different type of silicone on it. Sew it along the channels, and then put some duct tape on it. But anyway, as I say, I put some links to some of the information that I found online. If you've got any questions, or there's anything that I can answer, if you've got any questions for how I did any bit of it, then let me know and I'll try to answer your questions. As I say, I'm not a professional. It's just how my brain figured out that, yeah, okay, that would work for me. and once it's done, I'll take a photo. It seems to be working, and I'm quite pleased with it. So, yep, that's how I've done my curved stairs.